Hello and welcome to Female Cricket Live, powered by Radio. Match number 12, which is going to be the last and the final Women's T20I of the 2022 Commonwealth Games in the league stage, is going to be played between England and New Zealand tonight at Edgbaston in Birmingham. The match will start at 10:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 6 p.m. local time, and you can catch all the live action on Sony Live app and Sony Sports Network. Now, before we start previewing the match number 12, which is the last league match of the Commonwealth Games in Women's T20I cricket, let us have a quick look at match number 11, which was played early in the day between South Africa and Sri Lanka, which South Africa went on to win by 10 wickets. So put into bat first, Sri Lanka were bowled out for a modest score of 46 in 17.1 overs, thanks to Nadine de Klerk, who wreaked havoc with the ball, picking up 3 for 7 in her 4 overs and also registering her T20I career best figures in that match. On the other hand, for Sri Lanka, it was their captain, Chamari Atapattu, who was the lone warrior in the fight as she scored 15 runs for them. In reply, South Africa made light work of the run chase as they gunned down the total in just 6.1 overs, thanks to their opening pair in Anneke Bosch and Tasman Brits. While Bosch scored 20 runs, Brits mustered 21 to help their team register a 10-wicket win over the Sri Lankans. Now, ahead of us, we have another exciting contest on the cards. It is between England and New Zealand. And to preview this match, I have with me Polly Starkey and Neha Shetty. So, Polly Starkey is a cricketer, cricket journalist, and a cricket podcaster from England, while Neha Shetty is an avid cricket follower and a cricket podcaster. So, welcome both of you to Female Cricket Live.
Hello.
Hi, great. So, Polly, uh, excited to see England playing against New Zealand just before the semi-finals.
Yeah, I think it's going to be such a good game. I mean, we've seen incredible crowds at Edgbaston over the last week or so. And I think the England games have been a great example of that. And I think being the last group game and being quite an important game for England, actually, deciding, who they're going to face in the semi-final, I think it's going to be a great game with an amazing atmosphere.
So, Neha, let me ask you, did you expect New Zealand to qualify to the semi-finals well before the third match that is going to be played between them and England?
Right. I mean, I did expect them to qualify, because they're in a group which has Sri Lanka and, South Africa. So I did expect, wins, not easy wins, but wins against these two outfits. And now playing against England in this much awaited, mouth-watering clash is something I'm definitely looking forward to.
Absolutely. There is no doubt that it is going to be a riveting contest between two strong teams in England and New Zealand. All right. So, Polly, England had a terrific run against South Africa the other day. They won the match by 26 runs. So, what are your first thoughts on England's performance in that game?
Yeah, again, I thought it was really good, and it kind of their momentum continued from how they played against South Africa in the previous series. Again, I thought their fielding was really strong as well. Batting wise, I thought obviously Alice Capsey did incredibly, top scoring and getting her first half century in international cricket. However, I think actually the more prominent performance was between Amy Jones and Catherine Brunt, who just put on the runs at the end, and their strike rates were really healthy. And I think, in my opinion, they won the match for the team, and I thought they did incredibly. So a really good, convincing performance by England, and I'm sure they'll take a lot of the positives from that into today's match.
Certainly, certainly. I feel even England had a great outing against South Africa, as you mentioned, Polly, about Elise Capsey, of course, scoring her first half century in international cricket at just 17 years of age. I think she's the second youngest English player to do that after the great Sarah Taylor herself, who I think scored her international century at the age of 18. So that's a remarkable feat achieved by Elise Capsey. So, Neha, moving on to you, similar to what England tasted earlier against South Africa, New Zealand had a win over Sri Lanka by 45 runs. So, what are your first thoughts on New Zealand's game against Sri Lanka?
Right. So when we were previewing the match, right, versus Sri Lanka and New Zealand, we were looking at the head-to-head statistics, and Sri Lanka has never beaten New Zealand in a T20I, and that record was theirs to change. Right, the spinners were phenomenal in those middle overs. They literally stifled New Zealand, and New Zealand could just manage to get 67 runs, and they lost like 5 wickets between that over 17 to 16. So it really did look like the momentum was kind of shifting towards. It was shifting towards Sri Lanka, but the way New Zealand came back was just amazing, right? and they denied Sri Lanka that much deserved win, quite unfortunately. And I think from a Sri Lankan point of view, obviously the spinners were phenomenal, but they do have deeper issues, right, to address. But from a New Zealand perspective, I think it was a great win. You could see all their departments, firing, and it just went to show, that they didn't have any rustiness, and that win against South Africa was not just a flash in the pan kind of thing. So it was, good to see.
Right. Right. So two confident teams, they are going to take on each other in just a few minutes' time. So, Polly, let me ask you that England, of course, had two matches and two wins in those games. One against South Africa, again the other against Sri Lanka. So, how do you assess England's performance? Also, given the fact that they are missing the captain Heather Knight, still they are able to get that success.
Yeah, I think it just shows how much depth this England side have, and obviously, I think it's quite clear that Heather has had a big influence on the decisions that have been made, and Nat's kind of just carrying out that role on the field. But no, I think England have been amazing, especially, I suppose, when your captain is out and injured, it must kind of take some energy out of the team and must be quite demoralising. But England haven't shown that at all, and they've shown their fight all the way through. And actually, I think in this England team, there are a lot of senior players. You think about, Nat Siver, you think even Sophie Eccleston, age 20, 22, 23, she is kind of a senior player. And actually they're really stepping up into those roles, helping the younger and less experienced players. So no, I think England have just shown what they can do, and to be able to do it without their captain, I think it shows how much depth they have in that side, and hopefully that can continue into the next game, so they won't struggle too much without Heather Knight.
Certainly, I think Nat Siver has shouldered the responsibility of the team exceedingly well. In absence of Heather Knight, she has been the standout captain, if we can say that, for England, and she has led from the front. Neha, similar to again England, we have seen New Zealand winning two matches, two out of two wins in the Commonwealth Games so far. So, how do you assess New Zealand's performance so far?
Right. So again, New Zealand has been super impressive coming back from a long break, because they last appeared in that World Cup where they had a very disappointing exit. But, they really didn't look to show any of that sadness onto this Commonwealth Games, right? Because versus South Africa, they managed to get that amazing win, batting first, making that convincing 167, losing just 2 wickets, right? And it was like, it just felt like they were, batting really well. They backed it up with a good bowling performance as well. And again, in the match versus Sri Lanka, right, they were on the brink of a collapse, and they really came back strong, posting that 147 from the kind of the position they were in was really nice to see. And it was nice to see even the middle order step up finally, because we tend to, always put the focus on Sophie Devine, Susie Bates, and Amelia Kerr. But it was nice to see the middle order also step up, and it's a very young and inexperienced unit. But they still, managed to stand up and take responsibility, and, they raised their hands and they took that responsibility to, ensure New Zealand wasn't facing that much of problems. And Leah Tahu, right, now her cameo was simply impressive. And in spite of her not being a part of the contracts, I think she hasn't let that affect her as much, which was very pleasing to see, right? She's just putting herself out there, playing selflessly. So I think New Zealand just has so many characters like that. That was really impressive to see that, they're firing on all cylinders, and they are definitely a team to watch out for in the semi-finals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks. Nice answer that by Neha, and analyzing Team New Zealand's performance in the Commonwealth Games so far. So, Polly, moving on to you, I remember in one of our previous conversations, you mentioned about Catherine Brunt and her workload management. Perhaps she would not play the second match against South Africa, but she continued to play both the matches for England. So, do you see Catherine Brunt playing today, or do you think England will give her the rest before the much important semi-finals?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that they would rest her, just because you wouldn't want her not feeling able to compete in the semi-finals or finals. And I think that's the priority for England. I mean, obviously this match does matter, but I don't think it's as must-win as obviously a semi-final. So I think, yeah, they probably will rest her and potentially bring in Freya Davis. I would imagine they would pick Davis over Kate Cross, but it would be good to see one of them have an opportunity. I think it must be quite difficult to be in a squad and obviously not have your chance to play. But yeah, I would imagine they would rest Brunt, just because she is such a valuable player, and especially if England face someone like Australia, then they're going to want her to be there because she can make that impact.
Interesting point by you, Polly. Let us see if England decides to rest their pace sensation Catherine Brunt, or they continue to play her, giving no chance to the New Zealand batters to just run away with the game. So, Neha, moving on to you. Of course, England has the likes of Elise Capsey, who has been phenomenal. She has scored 94 runs, including one half century. She is the leading wicket taker for England. So, how do you see New Zealand bowlers trying to keep Capsey quiet today?
That is a good question, right? This is her nascent stages at the international level. And I think it's very difficult to, point out a glaring weakness or, a chink in her armor. But yes, for sure, I'm very certain, that the New Zealand bowlers will have some plans against her. Now, playing with that black eye, we know she's made of steel, and she did show a lot of character. I mean, the way she was batting, like wickets were tumbling around her, but the stability with which she was batting, was just delightful to see at such a young age. Carrying your team across the line was just, I think, phenomenal. But I think New Zealand would still, try to bowl short, so they can induce an edge, or just try to mix it up with slower deliveries, Yorkers. Basically, just keep her guessing, right? Because she doesn't have that much experience. So just keep her guessing as to what the next delivery is going to be. Don't let her settle. And probably they can also try to induce some big shots, and try taking wickets of the other batters. So this way she gets stifled, and she'll have to play a slower game and just try to anchor the ship. So these are probably some of the strategies that the White Ferns might use against someone of her quality.
Great. Interesting points by you, Neha, on that. On potentially what could be the bowling strategies that the White Ferns could employ against Elise Capsey. So, Polly, as we are speaking about Capsey, if we look at her statistics so far in the Commonwealth Games, she has scored 94 runs, including one half century. And if you look at the second best England batter, it is way down to Amy Jones, who has just 39 runs. So, do you think that will be a concern for England so close to the semi-finals, because the likes of Sophia Dunkley, Danny White, Nat Sever, they have been kept quiet by the opposition?
Yeah, I think it is a concern. I think when the openers aren't doing their job, I think that is a slight worry. I think it's been slightly tinted by the fact that, Alice Capsey is so good and England haven't actually been in danger at any point and no one's challenged them. But I think today could be the day where they're challenged, and actually Lisa Kitely and Heather Knight are going to realise actually this isn't quite working, and it's only against weaker teams that we can have this formula. So I think it will be interesting to see what happens today, and hopefully players will step up and it will be absolutely fine. But I think one thing England do have kind of in their back pocket is the fact they've got players like Izzy Wong who can bat. She opens the batting for her domestic team, Central Sparks, and we've seen her, in the county setup, she got 90 odd at the start of the season. And so she can bat really well, and all the way down the order, you see strength in the batting. You think about Freya Kemp, she plays down at Southern Vipers, and she again is a really good batter. But actually, these players haven't batted yet in international cricket, so it's a bit of a gamble to try and rely on them. So I think, yes, it is a concern that Sophia Dunkley and Danny Wyatt aren't batting for a while, but a game happens, and hopefully it can happen within that game.
So let us hope from an England perspective that the remaining batters are able to step up and support Elise Capsey, who has been doing brilliantly in the Commonwealth Games so far. So Neha, if we look at New Zealand's matches against South Africa and Sri Lanka, they have batted first and won both the matches. So do you think that Sophie Devine today, if she gets a choice to win the toss, do you think she will bowl first, just to try something like chasing before the semi-finals?
Yes, I mean, considering they've won both their matches, this is perhaps something they'd like to give a try, chasing and see how it'll work. And, they can see if that works well. But if they're put into bowl first, and if they, bowl as well as they did versus Sri Lanka, then I think we can expect a good outing, right? Because England is already showing some signs of missing Heather Knight. Their top order looks a little unstable too. But Alice Capsey is like batting on another level. She's kind of also filling the vacuum that Heather Knight has left. But I think getting the openers out early on and taking the middle order is something that, they would be looking to do. But yeah, I think, bowling first and later chasing might be something they'd want to try out today.
Interesting. Interesting. Let us see what Sophie Devine decides to do if she wins the toss today against England. So, Polly, do you see any changes England making to their playing level against New Zealand tonight?
I think the only change I could see happening is Catherine Brunt being rested, and Freya Davis or Kate Cross coming in. I don't think it would necessarily be justified to replace anyone else. There has been talk about, Danny Wyatt being slightly out of form and stuff, but I don't think that's a kind of reason to drop her. I think, as I've mentioned before, once she gets started, she can play really, really well. And I think actually bringing someone in would be a bit of a risk. The only reason I can think they would do it is just in case a player got injured, giving someone else a chance, just in case, and they did have to step up in the semi-final. You don't want someone's first game in the Commonwealth Games to be in a semi-final final. So giving people that experience, but at the same time, I feel like England aren't going to be thinking ahead that much in terms of, there's a possibility of one of our players getting injured. I don't think that's going to be a concern. So I think they will just stick with their 11 and potentially change Catherine Brunt, and that's kind of it.
So I think as you just spoke about Danny White and she not being in the best of touches. So in case if England decides to drop Danny White, who do you see opening the batting for England with Sophia Dunkley then?
It's kind of a difficult one. I think potentially Bryony Smith's an option, because at regional level she opens the batting sometimes and she can be a very powerful player. At the same time, I could also see Alice Capsey stepping up. England have gone with this method of if they lose a wicket in the power play, then Capsey comes in at 3. And in some ways she's opening because, maybe Sophia Dunkley's there for one ball or something. So in essence, she is opening. And she's very capable of doing that, as we've obviously seen. So I think they could do that. But as I say, I don't think it's going to be kind of top of their priority to try that out.
Right. So I think according to Polly, Catherine Brunt could be the only change that England could make going ahead into the match against New Zealand. So similarly, Neha, what do you think? Will New Zealand make any changes to their playing 11? Do you feel that they'll test their bench in the form of Georgia Plimmer, Claudia Green? They have them in the bench.
I think it's very unlikely that they'll go for a change, right? Because in the first match, I think they had Fran Jonas, and in the second one, they replaced her with Rosemary Mayer. But I really think it's unlikely because this unit seems settled and it's firing on all cylinders. So it's I think highly unlikely that they'd want to change this. And I think they would want to end at the top of the table. So this win will certainly help them get there. And this team, this playing 11 does look solid on all fronts. So I think it's not going to happen.
So I think according to Neha, an unchanged playing 11 is what we'll see for the White Ferns. All right, so before we start taking questions from our fans, maybe if we can have some quick predictions from you, Polly. Let us start with you. I want you to predict the team that you think is going to win, and also the top batter and top bowler according to you for today's match.
Okay, I think England are going to win, but I think it's going to be extremely close. I think it's going to be a bit of a nail biter. In terms of top scoring, I have a really good feeling about Danny Wyatt today. I don't know why, and I really hope she plays well. I think in terms of bowling, maybe this is just kind of what I want to see, but I really want to see Leah Tahuhu play well again. I think especially with the fact she lost her contract, I just want her to prove to New Zealand selectors, why she's there and how good she can be. But again, she can be quite expensive. So I don't know whether, if Danny Wyatt bats really well, I don't think Leah Tahuhu's bowling figures are going to be amazing. So no, it'll be interesting to see. But I think, Alice Capsey again, I can imagine her batting well. And it'd be great to see Izzy Wong getting a couple more wickets at her home ground as well.
Interesting picks by you, Polly. One from, of course, your home team, England, and the other from New Zealand. All right, so Neha, let us have your predictions.
Right. Again, England has been one of the teams to beat in this competition. And even coming into the Commonwealth Games, they were in such good form. So I really think that New Zealand will give them a good fight. But I think England will hold the edge, going into this much awaited clash. But with respect to who's going to score most runs, I think today it's going to be Nat Siver's day, because she's been quiet for so long. I really think if she gets a go, if, wickets fall and the need is there for her to bat, I think she's going to really fire. And amongst the wickets, probably Amelia Kerr. She too has had a quiet time with the ball till now. I don't know why I'm just backing the underdogs right now, but I really think Amelia Kerr too could, come up with some interesting wickets and set up the match well.
Great. Interesting picks again by you, Neha. One in Nat Siva and other in Amelia Kerr. All right, let us see what happens in the match between England and New Zealand, which is just few minutes away. All right, so if we can start taking questions from our fans now. Okay, Steve Carl is asking you, Polly, who do you think England would like to face in the semi-finals? India or I think he means Australia.
Well, I think England would definitely prefer to face India. We have a way better record against them than Australia. Obviously, Australia the world's best, and they're very difficult to beat. But I think, yeah, I mean, England will put up a fight either way, but it will be definitely they'll feel a lot more comfortable facing India than Australia. And we've seen how dominant Australia can be in the depth they have in their squad, and I don't think India quite have that. And we saw that in the game with India against Australia, the first game of the tournament. So yeah, England would definitely prefer to face India, which I think is why they'll be so desperate to win against New Zealand today.
Absolutely great. Thank you for your answer, Polly. Right, can we have the next question? Okay, Trippy Singh is asking us, no one was counting New Zealand as a medal contender before the start of the games, but with their performance, they have made a strong statement. Neha, see, they still can make it to the podium. Neha, your thoughts on this?
Yes. So I think, yeah, New Zealand wasn't like a medal contender before the start of the games, as rightly pointed out by Trippy. But their performance has been good. But again, we need to see against which teams, right? Now, this is against beaten South Africa and Sri Lanka. But I think against England will be their real asset test, and it will give us, inclination of where they're headed to, going into the semi-finals. So although I really don't see them probably winning, because there is teams like Australia, England, and even India, right? They're playing so well. So although New Zealand will give a very tough fight in the semi-finals, but I think seeing them amongst the medals is slightly unlikely.
Thank you for your answer, Neha. All right, can we have the next question? Okay, James Taylor is asking us, Heather's absence has come as a blessing in disguise for England, Elise Capsey being a prime example. What must be going through this 17-year-old's mind? What do you reckon? Polly, if you can throw some light on this.
Yeah, so Alice Capsey is obviously extremely talented, but kind of as a person, she's very relaxed. She's self-confident, but not kind of like overconfident, and that's something that I think has led to a lot of her success. She has high standards for herself, but she's very calm, collected, and I think she's just such a mature player for a 17-year-old. When you watch her play, you're not watching a teenager play, you're watching an experienced player, you're watching someone who knows the game, she's always looking around at the field. She's like, okay, where can I find a gap, all that sort of thing. And so I think these big situations that she's in, it's just helping her, it's motivating her, and she loves kind of the big occasion. Think about in the 100 last year at Lords, that's where she scored her half century, and it's like, okay, there was a big occasion, there was a big moment to step up. And actually, this has been an incredible opportunity for her, because not only has she got into the England side, actually there's a role to be filled, and that role is of the captain, like what the captain would normally do in terms of their performance. And so I feel this has been an amazing chance for her to show what she can do on the international stage. And everyone kind of had high expectations of, oh, she's this teenage star, she's this incredible player already, and she hasn't crumbled under that pressure. And it's amazing to see. And so I think, yeah, she'll be very calm, and I think she's just a girl that loves cricket and just wants to be able to show what she can do. So no, I'm very excited to see her play and show what she can do again.
Thank you, Polly, for telling us so much about Elise Capsey. And I'm sure many of our viewers, and of course me and Neha including, we did not know so much about this young, talented, and extremely dynamic player in Elise Capsey. So thank you, Polly, once again for your inputs. Neha, let us have your thoughts on Elise Capsey. How has it been for you seeing Elise Capsey in the last two matches?
I think she's been an absolute revelation, right? Like in the inaugural season of 100, that's where I first saw her, and she was just phenomenal. I think she was playing for Oval Invincibles, and under the captaincy of Danny Van Nieuwkerk, she was just brilliant, in the middle order, whenever the team, lost those quick wickets, or when they really needed the runs. I think she always stepped up, and that was just it was just amazing to see, right? And she always spoke about the role that her family plays, and it's very nice to listen to perspectives from players. So even her performances has not tapered since then. She's had a good domestic season, and even now, right, she's making the most of her time in the international circuit as well. So I will be interested to see when Heather Knight comes back, where will Alice Capsey slot in, because she's a very flexible player, right? Because as Polly rightly mentioned, that she's batted right at the top of the order, and now we've seen her come in at 3, sometimes even at 5, right? So I think she's going to turn out to be a very big player in women's cricket, and yeah, just rooting for her, I guess.
Great. Thanks, Neha, for your thoughts on Elise Capsey. All right, I think we have one final question from a fan. It is from Netha Chaudhary. New Zealand shouldn't look to rest their pacers. Their young attack has to play England, who are now peaking to know where exactly they stand. Neha, would you like to answer this?
Absolutely. It's a very good point that Nita brings up, because, the Pacers are going to challenge the England batting. And this is certainly not a match where they should be rested, because you're going to face tougher teams, right, in the semi-finals and potentially the bronze medal match. So, yeah, New Zealand should definitely look to put their best bowling resources against a quality team like England to see where they stand. And I think we're just going to see a very interesting contest today.
Great, great. Thanks, Neha, for answering this one. Okay, I think we have one more question from a fan. Okay, Harsh is asking us, England playing a batter short, you feel? Brunt bailed them out in the previous contest. Yes. Polly, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, as I've mentioned before, I think England have a great batting order. They can bat all the way down to number 11, and especially, England have said that before, and I haven't always believed it. But I think with this T20 side, I mean, we have Sarah Glenn and Izzy Wong coming in at like number 10 and 11, and they can bat incredibly. So I don't think England are, battered short, and Catherine Brun can step up if she needs to. Everyone has kind of off days. I think England will be fine in terms of batting through the order. It's just making sure that strike rate is really high. But again, anything can happen on the day, and they haven't faced New Zealand since the World Cup, in fact. So it'll definitely be one to watch.
Absolutely. Great. I think we have one more question from a fan. Okay, Hania is asking us, Elise rightly had a lot of praises come her way even before her debut. It is important to share Freya Kemp too. She has been equally good. Neha, if we can start with you, if you can answer this one, and maybe we will move on to Polly for her comments.
Right. I mean, like we've spoken about Alice Capsey, but on the other hand, youngsters have really performed well for England, and Freya Kemp too has been super impressive. Right, her line and lengths have been perfect. She's getting those crucial wickets, and she's looked confident. Even when the captain does give her instructions on how to go about, I've seen how she, really does stand up and deliver. And even in the crunch moments of the match, she always finds a way to, get those wickets, which has been really impressive. I wish the media did talk about her too in equal measure. But yeah, again, she's another very exciting prospect for England going ahead, because we saw Anya Shrubsole's retirement recently. So we need pacers to step up, right? We've had Kate Cross, we have Issy Wong, now Freya Kemp is in the mix. We also have Freya Davis. So yeah, it's really interesting to see these youngsters coming up from the setup. It really shows that England is doing something right in their domestic setup. Because we can see how players are getting springed onto the international setup, right? So good stuff.
Okay. Polly, finally, your thoughts on Freya Kemp?
Yeah, I think Freya Kemp's really talented. I mean, I was quite surprised when I saw her included in the Commonwealth Games squad. I mean, she only made her debut for Southern Vipers, her regional team, in May, and she's been injured for 2 years before that. So I was quite surprised, and I think potentially she is a little bit too young, but she's had some really good performances. The only kind of slight concern I had was in the game against South Africa, she bowled the last over. And, if it was a close game, maybe they wouldn't have turned her, but it wasn't her best over at all. I think the first ball was a wide, and then she got hit for 4. But I don't think that's too much of a concern. She is only 17 and she's got plenty of time to develop. But yeah, I think it was kind of an interesting move, England including her, because I suppose with Tash Farron being injured, they needed a left arm seam bowler to come in, and she was kind of the perfect solution. But No, I think she has done really well, and I think she does go under the radar a bit, especially with how good Alice Capsey is. But she does deserve to be praised. But yeah, she's kind of an interesting prospect for England, and I think give her a few years and she can really flourish in that environment.
Thank you, Polly, for your comments on Freya Kemp. All right, so once again, thank you, Polly and Neha, for taking out time and talking to us and previewing the match between England and New Zealand. The match will start at 10:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 6 p.m. local time in England, and all the fans can catch the live action on Sony Live app and Sony Sports Network. We'll be back on 6th of August, that is day after tomorrow, to preview the first semi-final between Australia and either of New Zealand or England. So let us see who Australia is going to take on. I'm sure Polly does not want to see England playing against Australia in that match, but let us see what happens when we preview the match, first semi-final of the Commonwealth Games. So thank you to all the fans and viewers for watching this, and do join us for a conversation on 6th of August at 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time to preview the match between Australia and either of England or New Zealand, and send us your questions using hashtag Female Cricket Live. Thank you.